It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Black Real Estate Dialogue Podcast, episode 149. A couple quick announcements before we get into this episode. If you haven't already, definitely leave us a 5-star rating, leave us a review. Also, subscribe. If you do all of the above, I will give you access to a free training on how to analyze a real estate market. Just email me with a screenshot of your rating and review at bredialogue@gmail.com. I'll have that link below in the show notes as well. All right. So we had an event. I had a networking event and hosted a couple of live interviews in LA on Saturday, December 17th. It was amazing. Shout out to the panelists. Shout out to the audience. Shout out to everyone who supported. Shout out to my wife as well, who held it down at the merch table. Thank you all so much for your support. It was an amazing event. We had Q&A. So I want to shout out to Lanisha Stubb. Shout out to Marion Lee. Shout out to Nick Goucher. Shout out to Crystal Denman, who showed out and killed it. It was an amazing event. The content will actually be released as a podcast episode in probably in January. So very much looking forward to that. And if you want me to do an event in your city like this with live interviews, Q&A, networking, drinks, and everything, let me know. Send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram and let me know. All right. So today I want to talk about an article that I posted on Instagram that got a lot of traction recently. And the topic was 250,000 people who took out a mortgage this year are underwater. But before I get into that, there's something that I've been wanting to say for some time, because I've been noticing that a lot of people are investing blindly. They're investing in real estate blindly. And if you don't do market research before making a real estate investment, then there's honestly no point of investing at all. Investing in the wrong city or in the wrong part of the city can completely ruin your investment. So it's important to do your research and make sure you are aware of all the factors that can impact your investment in the long term. Like I said, leave that rating, leave that review, and I will directly send you a free training on how you can do just that. All right. So like I mentioned, 250,000 people who took out a mortgage this year are underwater. This means that they owe more than the house is worth. And so this study and this data was found by Black Knight, which is a mortgage software provider. So they had a whole detailed report in addition to this article that I was able to read through. It has some pretty interesting insights on it. All right. And then another million people have less than 10% in equity in their home. And something else to note early on is that the portion of underwater mortgages is still at a historic low. So they're noticing a trend, but still in the grand scheme of things, it's historically low. And 8% of mortgages taken out this year are underwater. So that's about 1 in 12 houses that were purchased in 2022. Now, one of the factors that the article mentioned is the rising interest rates, obviously. And so interest rates, as we all know, if you've been listening, if you've been paying any type of attention, have been rising this year, and they've doubled. At the time of this article, the average interest rate was 6.3%. And that's another factor that people that has impacted whether or not people are underwater in their properties. The next interesting stat is that 25% of home buyers with government-backed mortgages, so think your FHA loans, your VA loans for veterans. So 25% of home buyers with government-backed mortgages who purchased this year are now underwater. And then it also went into some statistics on specific cities. And at the end, I'll let you know my thoughts. I'll let you know what this means for you, if this means anything, in my opinion. So we'll get to that very, very shortly. Keep listening. So in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and Honolulu, Hawaii, more than 30% of mortgaged homes bought this year are underwater. So that means in those places, more than 30% of homes people purchase with a mortgage are worth less than they owe. In Virginia Beach, 22% are worth less than what is owed. And then in California, in Bakersfield, California, Riverside, San Diego, and Stockton, so kind of spread throughout the state. That's north all the way to south and central as well, I guess. So that's 20%. 20% of homes fall into that category. And They also mentioned that those are cities that have a large military presence where many people buy homes on the VA loan. So the VA loan, you can pay, I believe, 0% down. We had a couple of episodes on that. So for all the veterans out there or family who have veterans, something to look into. And it also goes on to mention FHA mortgages, which if you've been listening, you should know, but if you don't know, the FHA mortgage is a government-backed loan where you can pay as little as 3.5% down on a property. And so the good thing about those programs is it allows people who may not have as much money and can't afford the 20% down to still get into a property, right? Whether it's single, multifamily, they're still able to get into a property. And for those who don't make as much income, it can be a good program if you can't afford that 20% down. And depending where you're at, that 20% down might be a whole lot. And so something that the article also mentioned is that these type of loans become a liability when home prices fall, and it keeps people stuck in their homes. Now, this implies that someone's buying a home on one of these programs and is trying to leave in like 12 months or 24 months. You know what I mean? And so I actually don't agree with that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. So the point again is those who use FHA, those who use VA loans, it keeps them stuck in their homes. And for me, that implies that if they're underwater now, they'll continually be underwater, which I don't necessarily agree with. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on that and what you think. And then something else the article mentioned is that being underwater becomes a bigger issue when homeowners cannot pay their debt. Now, you should never get into a property if you can't cover the mortgage comfortably. Now, this goes for if it's a home for yourself and your family, or if it's an investment property. If you can't cover the mortgage yourself comfortably with whatever your income is right now, there's no point of buying the property. You're spreading yourself too thin. You should always have reserves in the case of losing a job. But if you cannot comfortably afford the mortgage, there's no point in buying the property, even if you qualify. Something else a lot of people do is buying the property at the highest point they can afford. So buying the most expensive house that they can qualify for, it's another big mistake. You should never buy a property buy the most expensive property you can qualify for, especially if you don't have reserves, and especially if it's going to take up a large percentage of your monthly income. That's just straight up irresponsible. So it's something that you want to think about when you're analyzing those numbers for your investment property. You want to make sure that you can cover that mortgage if the tenants don't pay. I had a vacancy for about 3 months, and thankfully I had reserves. I was able to cover that mortgage for the time that I was rehabbing the property, waiting for another tenant. I had no problem. The mortgage got paid. Why? Because I bought a property that I could comfortably pay the mortgage if the tenants didn't pay, and I had reserves. I didn't go and spend all of my cash flow. You know what I'm saying? So it's very, very important. I know it can be tempting to go for the most house that you can afford, but it can end up biting you in the case of job loss, in the case of sickness, like anything can happen. You want to make sure that you hedge against what might happen, because life happens to everybody at some point. All right. And so again, make sure that you can comfortably pay the mortgage. All right. And something else they also mentioned is people getting into homes are having higher debt to income ratios. And so because of that, they are becoming delinquent on their mortgages much earlier. All that means to me is you bought too much house. You bought too much house. You're house rich and cash poor. House rich and cash poor. You have a great big house. It's eating up all your income. You barely have anything left over. It doesn't make any sense. So in summary, I have a couple of opinions on this article. I don't think it matters if a property is underwater unless you're trying to get out of the property very soon. Real estate is a long-term game. Over the long term, you will win, right? Especially if you invested in the right area. So whether you bought a house this year, bought an investment property this year, and you're underwater, it doesn't matter if you're continuing to service the debt. It doesn't matter if you have tenants who are covering the mortgage, and it doesn't matter if you plan to hold the property long term. So that's something I want you to really walk away with. And also, cash flow, right? Everyone talks about cash flow. You want to make sure that you're not cash flowing $50, $100, because when things change, that's not really going to help you build up your reserves, right? You want to make sure that there's enough of a spread. And if it means that you are being picky and you're passing on properties, then so be it. For me, myself, I have certain numbers that I'm looking for in a property, and I've already canceled 2 contracts in a month, right? And so it's important to make sure that you're making the right investment. It's important to make sure that you're analyzing these numbers and investing in the right areas. And so those are my thoughts on the article. Definitely let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing from y'all. Let me know what other content you want me to create in the new year, what kind of topics you want the guests to talk about, all those things as we come to the close of the year. I'll link that article as well in the show notes. But again, leave that rating, review, subscribe, send me that email, and then I'll get you that free training on market research. All right. Without further ado, I'll talk to you guys soon.
Hi, everyone. Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.